So today, within the context of the controversy over female diksa-gurus, I'm presenting here, my presentation is titled, How We Understand Srila Prabhupada and Why Consensus is So Elusive, because I think one thing all sides can agree on, both sides can agree on, is that there's a lot of talking past each other. So I would like to address that issue here. I think that may help clear up a few of the issues that we're facing. So, next slide. Thanks. Okay. So, big question here. Did Srila Prabhupada give something new? Many of us are convinced that he has. Many others of us are convinced that he hasn't. So I'd like to read two statements here. This first statement, this was actually came as a response about 15 years ago to a dialogue that the ICC, which met yesterday, and the women's ministry had. It was back in 2004. There was an issue as to whether Indian temples were complying with new rules and regulations passed by the BBC regarding the inclusion and participation of women in ISKCON centers. So, in that regard, diksa-guru Prabhu and I, we collaborated on a paper research project which we submitted to them. Do you remember that, diksa-guru Prabhu?
Sorry.
You don't? Well, yeah, we did. I assisted you on a paper that was part of that dialogue. And so they sent back a response, and in one of the meetings, ladies had that this is what they wrote. They said, quote, Vedic life, as extolled in our scriptures, is highly interpretive. Understanding what is truly Vedic is elusive. Srila Prabhupada taught us about Vedic society and the role of varnashram in elevating society, but he did not, practically speaking, engage his spiritual daughters within such a system. They were active preachers, pujaris, cooks, etc. Srila Prabhupada, in fact, introduced a new model with new standards, one based on preaching. So that's a very bold claim that Prabhupada is giving us something new standards. The old standards, they don't matter anymore, or maybe they did at one time but not now. And next statement I want to read under that is also very interesting. The source of it will be self-evident. The important point is that although the Ritvik system may be totally unique, it does not violate higher order Shastra principles. It is testament to Srila Prabhupada's genius that he was able to mercifully apply such Shastra principles in new and novel ways according to time, place, and circumstance. So just consider these two statements side by side. Very different in different areas, but they're making very similar claims. One is that Srila Prabhupada is giving us something new. And no, not that. One is that Srila Prabhupada is giving us something new, and that there's no precedent, there doesn't need to be any precedent for it. That maybe there's some very, kind of like abstract statements in the Shastra that can justify it. Like some people sometimes say, always remember Krishna and never forget him, and then whatever you do in between, that's up to you. But this is what they're saying. And you'll also notice too, a couple things. In the first statement, they say, understanding what is truly Vedic is elusive. What is Vedic life? We don't know what that is. He taught us about the role of varnashram in elevating society, but he did not practically engage his spiritual daughters within such a system. So that means that in Prabhupada, if you look in the database, you'll see more than 1,000 references to varnashram. But now that's elusive. So now whatever Prabhupada was saying about that, hundreds and thousands of times, that we don't understand that, or we can't understand it, or it doesn't have any place in our life, in Krishna consciousness. And also, too, the lower statement, which is in the final order. There's so many statements, there's so many Shastric references and so forth about the normal initiation system. But now that's all lost. We have no application for that. So that's another characteristic of these two statements, is that your whole parampara, your whole precedent, what Sadhu said, what Shastra said, is no longer relevant. Next verse. I mean, back up. Right here. So, can we understand Prabhupada perfectly? So the problem is that even if we quote Srila Prabhupada at length, we can still come to a wrong conclusion. So we have this drawing here, and we can see that there are different lines going through a single point. The single point is Srila Prabhupada's teachings. We have his books. Books are the basis, right? But we have many different ideas about what those books say, about what Srila Prabhupada said and what he meant. So we have a line here, Brahmachism, we have a different Darwinism, we have your Rupism, we have my big idea, and in the current context, we also have very different ideas about the roles of women in society and in spiritual life. So here's the problem. The problem is we are imperfect. We are still conditioned souls. A very important point is that sadhana bhakti, a sadhaka, is someone who is a candidate for liberation. He's not liberated, he's a candidate for liberation. It's a very important point. When you're sadhya bhakta, then you're on a different platform. So we have these four defects: Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa, Karanapatava. And so because of that, we have to follow an authorized system for actually understanding things properly. Next slide. So, in ISKCON, the ground realities are that the way we actually reason about these things is somewhat less than ideal. So, here's some typical characteristics. Srila Prabhupada's statements are primary evidence. Conformance with Shastra, however, is generally treated as optional. Now, say like in the final order, they also occasionally quote Shastra too, but only if it supports their thesis. Not if it goes against something that they say that it doesn't support what Prabhupada says. But here's the problem, is that because you have these four defects, how do you know that you're actually understanding Prabhupada correctly? You don't, and therefore they came to a wrong conclusion. Conformance with sadhu, this is other acharyas, is practically non-existent. So in Gita, Srila Prabhupada talks about, when he talks about what is the eternal, the soul, he says, on the authority of Ramanujacharya, eternality means has no beginning and no end. So Prabhupada is taking Ramanuja as an authority. It's unquestionable authority. You have to take it. You have to accept his authority, and so forth. So information, from these other sadhus, other acharyas, is practically non-existent in our discussions. So the typical attitude for us, Srila Prabhupada, is Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra all roll up into one. And with all that, we've had so many train wrecks in our society, so many differences, so many conflicts that could have been resolved for following a better system. Next slide. So here's the recipe for being bona fide. So this is very important because we're doing so many nice projects, so many big projects, so much nice preaching, but if we're not bona fide, it doesn't matter. We're just like everybody else who's not interested in bhakti or whatnot. We don't want to be another big bogus religious institution. So this is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. Many of you know it, but I have highlighted one important word in here. I made it in bold, but I'm going to read this. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is the way incarnation should be accepted. So somebody asked Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how do I understand what is a bona fide avatar? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's answer was Shastra Dvara. So by Shastra. Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Bhakti Chitte Te Kariya Aikya. One should accept the thing as genuine by studying the words of saintly people, the spiritual master of the Shastra. The actual center is the Shastra, the revealed scripture. If a spiritual master does not speak according to the revealed scripture, he is not to be accepted. Similarly, if a saintly person does not speak according to the Shastra, he is not a saintly person. The Shastra is the center for all. Unfortunately, at the present moment, people do not refer to the Shastras. Therefore, they accept rascals as incarnations, and consequently, they make incarnations into a very cheap thing. Well, incarnations are not the only thing that we can make into a very cheap thing. We can make spiritual societies into a very cheap thing as well. And so we have to be very careful about that. So this word in bold, aikya means the reconciliation. You have to synchronize these things. It's not enough just to quote Guru and forget about Sadhu and Shastra, or to not include those in your analysis. The aikya is very important. It's one word, but it makes all the difference in meaning in this. So, one important point when trying to understand what Prabhupada really wanted is Prabhupada will not go against the parampara. Srila Prabhupada, he's not really creating anything new. He's giving us what Krishna had already given. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshi. So, a few things within the context of this current debate. One question we could ask is, would Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur have approved of female diksa-gurus? So let's consider. No woman was allowed to live in his temples. No woman temple president, sannyasi, etc. By the way, also Srila Prabhupada's time, there was no woman temple president or GBC and so forth. And here's a statement from Srila Prabhupada, in the letter. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj did not very much like preaching amongst women. Probably, very likely, he would not have approved of female diksa-gurus in his institution. So adjustments. Srila Prabhupada made many adjustments. What about those adjustments? Are these meant to be carried on for the next 10,000 years? Or are they temporary? How do we know? Let's look at this letter. Letter to diksa-guru, Montreal, 1968. He says that the brahmacharya ashram is a good success, is very good news. But the best thing will be if the grown-up brahmacharinis get married. According to Vedic culture, a woman is never to remain independent. I shall be glad if the brahmacharinis can have nice husbands and live as grihastas. But if they cannot find out good husbands, it is better to remain a brahmachari all life, even though it is a little difficult. So, Srila Prabhupada is indicating by this, whether that adjustment is temporary or permanent. And what is the deciding factor? The deciding factor is Shastra, because the Shastra is the will of the Lord. So, he's referring, of course, to Manusmriti, and that a woman is not given independence, not to be given independence. So this is the direction we have to go in. We may have brahmachari ashrams now, but as a society, we should be taking concrete steps to implement the actual Vedic system. So, this is from the recent statement. This is on the resolution regarding female diksa-gurus. Quote, Srila Prabhupada also taught that the service of diksa-guru naturally stems from fidelity to one's spiritual master and guru parampara. From one's mature preaching of Krishna consciousness, shiksha, empowered by such fidelity, and from the sense of selfless responsibility for those souls who become inspired to serve Lord Krishna by such preaching. So here we're on the same page. At least nominally we're on the same page. So first you have the fidelity to spiritual master and guru parampara, which of course means also sadhu and shastra. We definitely agree with that. However, the source of our controversy that we're having today is how far, or whether at all, the parampara, the guru parampara, is being taken taken seriously. There's some doubt about that. And as we saw yesterday in the ICC meeting, there was, many great doubts were expressed. So, one of the points is that, as Anuja we mentioned yesterday, that the GBC and other related committees and entities had spent many years poring over many different submissions and presentations and so forth. In fact, that website that was put together by the Chopani devotees that had different entries, I had some entries on that and some of us others as well. And we recognize that a lot of time has been given, and it was very nice actually of the GBC. I think you're one of the committee members that decided to actually make that available to the voting public. So that point's taken. However, there is a question of quality too, a question of inadequacy. So in the 2005 SAC paper, Shastra Advisory Council paper, they make this statement. They say, under the more recent Pancharatrika system, however, qualified women can accept and offer initiation. Well, that's not exactly true. Actually, it's generally not true. What we did, like 2-3 years ago when I came back to India, we started a project to actually look closely at the Pancharatra Shastras, especially Narada Pancharatra, to see what it said. And we actually found verses that explicitly talk about the qualification of women and their eligibility to give diksha, to act as mantra-guru. So we'll Damodar Prabhu in this presentation, we'll focus more on that. But in 5 minutes, I'll be finished. So a couple verses here from the Narada Pancharatra. So Najatu Mantra Nari. So it talks about this, mentions woman there. Even talks about even if someone's qualified as a shiksha guru, striya shudrayas chaiva, and so forth, they're not allowed to give initiation. They can give instruction, but not initiation. However, the same Pancharatra makes an exception. The very next verse. So it talks about perfect yogis, persons who are actually on the level of yoga pratyaksha. They can actually, and then all these other exceptions, all these other caveats don't apply. So this, for us, when we found these verses, this is actually very nice, because this actually reconciled all of Srila Prabhupada's statements. Srila Prabhupada, by the way, he's only made 4 statements total at all about the eligibility of women being able to give diksha. And so without having to interpret any of these statements, these 3 verses, they reconcile it all, because they talk about qualities. So there's 2 levels of eligibility. One is if you're not on this platform of yoga pratyaksha, if you're not a bhava bhakta, if you're not a sadhya bhakta. If you're sadhana bhakta, then you have another set of rules to follow, and that is the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Otherwise, you can give Bhagavad according to Bhagavad Vidhi, according to how Krishna tells you to do. Otherwise, we have to follow Shastra. So this is, when we review this, you have these requisites. They have, of course, the GBC resolutions taken directly from the SAC paper, especially number B. Women need to be 55 years of age and in a stable family situation living under the protection of a husband, elder son, son-in-law, qualified, and senior Vaishnava. But here's the point. The reason why women are not given freedom is because they're not eligible to exercise it. They can't exercise it properly. That's according to Manu. That might seem to be against the common wisdom, but just remember how Prabhupada, he stood by his guns when he said, the sun is closer to the earth than the moon. And that was based on Shastra. So, Srila Prabhupada set the standard there. We must follow Shastra, even when it seems impractical or just weird. So, is relative prerequisites. The big question here, and they admit it, since it's difficult to ascertain someone's level of bhakti and ensure stability, there's an admission here that the adhikar of the gurus, if they're going to be gurus at all, is not the highest level. We're still sadhana bhaktas. This is covered in the 6th chapter of Nectar of Devotion. 13th item is that one should not accept too many disciples. So it's not that sadhakas can't be bhaktas, but there are restrictions. So since we follow Narada Pancharatra in our process, we have to refer to that, the Narada Pancharatra, to understand these things. What is the qualification and so forth? Continue? So, this is my last slide here. And I just want to say that the GBC is certainly the ultimate managing authority of ISKCON. At the same time, the GBC itself, like all of us, we have certain boundaries that we have to observe. So those boundaries are sadhu, shastra, and guru. So if the GBC and the rest of ISKCON stays within these boundaries, then the GBC is authorized and the decisions are authorized. And what that means practically is that the shastras, the sadhu, and the guru, they provide the limited options we can choose from. And the GBC has the right to make those choices, provided they're within these boundaries. But if they go outside of these boundaries, then the GBC and the rest of ISKCON will no longer be authorized, and then you might see things, people, the rest of ISKCON start to try to go back into this area and you've got to split to something. Or the other way around, if the GBC stays within ISKCON and someone disagrees, they go outside of these boundaries and you have to split. So, in order to keep ISKCON unified, we have to make sure that everybody, GBC, the rest of ISKCON, stays within Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And for this purpose, we presented a book. We prepared a book, which is the first ever presentation in ISKCON, the first ever research in ISKCON that's documented what is our system of initiations from the Shastra, the basis of Shastra, to our sadhus who authorize this, to Prabhupada's implementation.